Hello everyone, my name is Nick Tripoli and I'm here to talk to you about one of my new PowerPoints. I named this one the Wisconsin COVEN, or COVEN. This one is based off of the vampire site, vampire werewolf thing, Twilight. Right here we have the information about the Wisconsin COVEN. It was founded between 1943 and 1945. Its current residence is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the cheese state. And it was founded by Andrew Wingard, with Judah and Mariah being their co-leaders. And considering that Wisconsin is the cheese state of America, it has gained the alias of the Cheese Coven. Now, the beginning of the Wisconsin Coven was founded by Andrew Wingard during World War II, when he was a young soldier fighting in Germany. He was turned by a trio of German newborns who turned him into a vampire in the hopes that his bloodlust would help him slaughter his comrades. A very rare thing with vampires is that they are able to control themselves before they go crazy with seeking blood. And that's exactly what Andrew did. He calmed himself before he went crazy for blood, and he was able to turn his two comrades, Judah and Mariah, into vampires, so that they would become his co-leaders in the beginning of what would later be the Wisconsin Coven. They later proceeded to slaughter many Nazi soldiers and any other witnesses, and they were later sent back to America after Hitler was defeated later on. Considering that Andrew liked to stay in the background and not get in people's way, he didn't want to draw attention to himself, as did many vampires. Many vampires did not want to draw attention to themselves or get the ire of the Volturi Guard. And so, afterwards, after they returned to America, they began taking people whom they assumed to be in the way, such as homeless men and prostitutes, and turning them into vampires to join their coven. And once in the events of Twilight, the coven had reached the amount of 14 vampires, constituting the second largest coven in existence after the Volturi. Another important aspect of the Wisconsin Coven, besides it being one of the youngest ever, is that each and every member of the Coven has a specific supernatural gift that can be used for either attack, defense, or stealth varieties. This would really make the Wisconsin Coven feared to other vampire covens, but in the eyes of the Volturi, make them very valuable as assets or parts of the guard. Andrew met Bella and Edward, the famous Twilight characters, in the woods while they were hunting. The Wisconsin Coven feeds on human blood, just like 90% of all vampires. And as spoken of before, the Wisconsin Coven feeds on anybody they view as in the way. And sooner or later, they became friends, though for unknown reasons, Andrew still does not like Edward. During the confrontation with the Volturi about Bella and Edward's hybrid daughter being Renesmee being mistaken for an immortal child, which in the Volturi's case is an extremely forbidden act, which means that a vampire is turning a practical baby into a vampire. That is completely unacceptable to the Volturi. And so, the Wisconsin Coven, in that confrontation, sided with the Cullens and were, as with most of their allies, were prepared to fight if it came to violence. After a long while of debate within the Volturi, they concluded that Renesmee was not a threat to exposing vampire kind, and they left without incident or bloodshed. So, the Cullens, the Wisconsin Coven, and all their allies were able to celebrate that there was no bloodshed, there was no violence, and there was no suffering for either sides. Andrew Wingard. He was born in 1924, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was turned by the German newborns in 1943 in the city of Dusseldorf, Germany.
He was 19 at the time, and his alias is Andy, which is a code name for Andrew, short version. Of course, he's a vampire, he's male, his height is 6'1", his hair color is blonde, his eye color is red, and vampires' eyes become black when they're very thirsty, and he had green eyes when he was human. He had a mother and father during World War II, and since then he's been the leader of the Wisconsin Coven. His special abilities are is the ability reflection, meaning he can turn against any vampire ability, reflect it tenfold with his mind. And of course, he was a soldier in the U.S. Army during his human life. Now he's the leader of the Coven. Judah. This is one of the co-leaders of the Wisconsin Coven. He was born around in the 1920s, and like Andrew, he was changed in Dusseldorf, Germany. But he was turned at the age of 21. His height is 5'9". His hair color is black. His special abilities are paralysis inducement. Paralysis is like when you're frozen, like in total pain or frozen in pain. Although I don't really know what paralysis means exactly. And he was also a soldier in the U.S. Army. Mariah. Again, born in the 1920s, turned in Dusseldorf, Germany. She was 25 when she was turned. Her height is 6'3". She's a brunette, and her special abilities include pheromone creation, meaning she can create any type of aroma when it's either attractive, like the smell of an apple pie, or repulsive, like the smell of a skunk. And she was a nurse for the U.S. Army during World War II. Nathaniel. Now, this is one of my favorite characters that I made, Nathaniel. He was born in the 1920s. He was turned between the 1940s and 90s. He was in his 20s, of course. His height is 6'5". His hair color is reddish brown, sort of like a dirty reddish brown, whatever exactly it is. Now, his special ability is the power to manipulate another vampire's special ability, meaning he can enhance them to like great levels, or he can reduce them to the point of shutting them down for a small period of time, like maybe 20 minutes at the most. Lucas. He was born a little after World War II in the 1950s. He was born between 1965 and the 1980s. He was 28. He was a fairly tall individual, consisting of 7 feet. His hair color was jet black. His special abilities is only physical. He has the ability to control his own muscles, gaining him the ability to not like bodybuilder muscles, but like muscles to rival that of Volturi member Felix. Caleb. This one was born in the 1940s. He was changed around the 1960s. He was in his 20s. His height is 5'7". His hair color is ash blonde, a little darker version of Andrew's blonde hair. Now, this one is also another one of my favorites, and like the Volturi leader Marcus, Caleb has the ability of relationship identification. Therefore, he can sense what the bonds of another group are, and possibly turn them against each other if he wants to. And that is why, like in the Volturi, Andrew uses Caleb to see that all the other members are loyal to him. Susan. This one was born in the 1950s. She was changed around in 1960s or 70s, and she was turned between the ages of 18 and 22. Her height is 5'6". Her hair color is dark brown, and her special ability is psychic navigation. Now, what that means is that she can create a perfect mental map of an area anywhere, like anywhere in the world, but she'd have to know the name of that said place in order to make the map. She can't, do it without knowing the proper thing.
Matthew. He was born in the 1950s, and he was changed around in the 1970s. Just like Andrew, he was changed around the age of 19. His height is 5 feet 7 inches, and just like Andrew, he has light blonde hair, but it's more of a little bleachish color than Andrew's natural blonde hair. And Matthew's special ability is memory manipulation. Now, what that means is he can enhance and strengthen anyone's memories or erase them to the point of temporary loss or permanent loss, whichever he chooses.
Rachel. Born in early 1930s, she was changed in the middle of the 1940s, and she was changed with 18, by far the youngest of the Wisconsin Coven. And her special ability is wall crawling. And I know that's more of a mutant power than a vampire power, but, I couldn't really find one that suits the vampire world other than the X-Men world. Eric. Born in the 1950s, he was changed in the 1970s. He was 21 at the time. His hair is brunette, and his special abilities is triangulation. Now, when I say triangulation, I mean that he can pinpoint anybody's position, like in a radius of at least 20 miles. He can pinpoint anybody, and just needs the name of that person, and he can search he's like his own webs, so to speak. Lena. 1950s, changed in the 1970s, age 19. Her hair color was dark blue, which is very rare for a human. Her special ability is psychometry, and that means she can see or take information from another. And in Lena's case, she can do that just by staring at her victim in the eyes for like maybe a minute. Because once that's done, she can gain all the knowledge she needs. Phoebe. Born in the 1960s, changed in 1978, just like another one. She was 18 at the time. And her special ability is Psychic Shadow. That means she can mask her own or the Coven's psychic presence with, like, a supernatural cloak of some sort. Meaning like Dimitri from the Volturi can't sense them for like maybe a few days, but he'll catch up. Nicholas. And he was born in the 1960s. He was changed in the 1980s. He was 20 at that time. His hair color was light brown. His special ability is heat generation. And when I say heat generation, he can create a lot of heat from his hands or his body, and it can be high enough in order to create second-degree burns on anything that he touches, as long as he is in control. Finally, we have Vanessa. She was born in the 1950s. She was changed in the 1970s. Her hair color is ash brown as well, and her special ability is lie detection. Lie detection, you all know what that means. And so that's pretty much it. And if you like what you saw, you can check out other of my PowerPoints at thenikoverse.com. And I am very willing to inform you about what other creations I've made. So thank you for watching, and I will see you again.